This module will be delving to the concept of econometrics and its origin. First, we focus on the definitional part of the word econometrics. What do we mean by the word econometrics? Basically, econometrics word can be decomposed into two components, econo and metrics, where metrics means the word of measurement. So, econometrics is basically measuring the variables in the study which will be relevant for the data analysis and also for the policy making in future. So, there were various definitions in the literature on econometrics. According to the Gerhard-Tinter of 1968, econometrics is basically an application of the mathematical statistics to economic data. So when we are referring to mathematical statistics, it refers to the concepts that are used in the statistical modeling and thereby the usage of mathematical tools. Economic data refers to any data of an economic variable which can be done at different frequencies. It can be done in the cross-section level, or it can be done in the time series level, or taking both of them. Economic data also takes care of micro and macro data in details. By micro data, we can refer to the cross-section analysis of per capita consumption expenditure, or by macro data, we can refer to the data on inflation or the data on GDP over a time period. So this also inculcates how the data can be reoriented or designed to carry on any kind of qualitative and quantitative analysis. So qualitative analysis depends on the responses, but the quantitative analysis depends on the numbers. So when we are referring to mathematical statistics or we are referring to economic data, we want to provide some empirical support. So this empirical support is basically a design to give an empirical specification, and thereby the empirical model can be built up and the model can deal with the economic analysis. This also refers to economic mathematical models and obtain numerical results. So whenever we are obtaining the numerical results based on the model, we are basically looking into the configurations of the variables, and this is based on a certain functional relationship. So an economic model can take care of the relationship between dependent and independent variable, but when we talk of an econometric model, it refers to the inclusion of the error term, and thereby the error term plays an important role in this regard. This also boils down to the concept of econometrics by Samuelson and other economists. By econometrics, they refer a quantitative analysis. So according to Samuelson, econometrics basically deals with a quantitative analysis where the responses are expressed in numbers, but of actual economic phenomena. For example, as we know the law of demand, like if the price of the commodity rises, quantity demanded will fall. Or we refer to any kind of macro theory, say of inflation unemployment paradox. So in all these cases, if we get the data on inflation and unemployment and we want to test the nature of the relationship, then we can explain that it is basically the economic phenomena which is being tested. Also, it refers to the concurrent development of the theory. So any kind of theoretical model which exists or any kind of theoretical evidence, how it can be validated with the data, that is also meant by an economic model. So the appropriate modes of inference can be taken up, which is based on the hypothesis testing, and thereby the economic model can take a better shape. And that is what Samuelson has already pointed out. When we refer to the Arthur and Goldberger definition of econometrics, it is basically referred to as a social science, because in econometrics we actually study the behavior. So econometrics quantifies the behavior of analysis or of any kind of historical origin or any individual or entity. So that entity can be a firm, that entity can be an individual or anyone who will apply the problems of social science. Social science also takes care of the amalgamation between economics, mathematics, and statistics. So when we refer to economics, we refer to any kind of economic theory. We use mathematics to go for a specification, and finally we apply the statistical tools to address the specification. This also is based on any kind of economic phenomena which can be validated at the end of the result. This also takes care of the next definition by Havlemo of 1944. So he has actually pointed out the right term of the amalgamation or a conjunction. So it is basically a conjunction of economic theory where the actual measurement is being done in terms of measuring the variables using the theory and technique of statistical inference as a breach pair. That means statistical inference is the major motto, but applications of statistics, mathematics, and economics play an important role. So this gives us to the basic question addressing to the definition that what is econometrics. So among the many definitions that are existing in the literature, we can refer to the final definition which was given by T. Havelomo, that it is a conjunction of economic theory and actual measurements. So by measurement, we mean any kind of variable in the data which can be ordinal or which can be nominal or which can be both. For example, when we refer to gender or we refer to age, it can be basically nominal in nature. But when we are ranking the preferences of an individual over time, it is basically becoming ordinal. That means we are ranking according to the order of preference. So this is how the economic theory and the actual measurements can be done in conjunction by the both. But a technical assistance and also a statistical inference can be drawn in this regard. So it is basically the application of statistics to validate or to cross any kind of economic theory which is existing. So it's a practical application of the theory. Now we refer to the schematic approach to explain the components of econometrics and how they are aligned with each other. By econometrics, first of all, we refer to the amalgamation of economic theory and mathematical economics. And thereby we go for economic statistics, and thereby the mathematical statistics, and all are convergent to this econometrics. So when we are referring to the dimension between econometrics and economic theory, as it is shown by the arrow, it is basically a two-way relationship. Because econometrics is built on the empirical support or empirical evaluation or justification of economic theory. As we can take an example from macroeconomics or Lucas paradox, where says that the capital will flow from the rich country to the poor country till the marginal products of the inputs are equalized. But in practice, the reverse follows. That is, capital is flowing from the poor to rich country. So this takes care of economic theory as the major fundamental which can be validated or which can be empirically treated using the notion of econometrics. Also, we refer to economic statistics and mathematical statistics in all. Economic statistics basically refers to any kind of descriptive analysis that can be done, for example, the central tendency or dispersion or correlation. Mathematical statistics refer to any kind of hypothesis testing where the inference can be drawn. Moreover, when we refer to the mathematical economics, it is basically showing the functional relationship between the independent and the dependent variable. But with the addition of econometrics, we are including an error term. And that is the most important fundamental when an economic model is distinct from an econometric model. So that is why econometrics is treated as a separate discipline. So now we focus on the issue why it is treated as a separate discipline. First of all, we refer to two important aspects of research from where econometrics boils up. Firstly, economic statistics. It is basically the concerning of collecting, processing, and presenting economic data. So when we are collecting the data, we are using various kind of methods. Either we use a primary method or we go for the secondary methods. So by primary data, we refer to questionnaire collection and collection of data. From the secondary, we refer to the secondary sources and the database. When we refer to the processing of the data, we refer to any kind of statistical tools which is applied, and today it is used for any software. So where the processing is being done or the tabulation of the data is being done. And after that, we go for the presentation of the economic data. Because presentation of economic data is very important in terms of explaining what the data speaks before it is put forward for any kind of data analysis. So basically, it is not being concerned with using the collected data to test economic theories. So whenever we go for economic statistics, we are not validating any kind of statistical data. We are only collecting it and we are only doing the visualization of the data. Now we go for mathematical statistics. Mathematical statistics provides many tools for economic studies. For example, mathematical statistics refers to any kind of functional relationship. It also refers to any kind of time-bound limits of any variable, or time series dimension of any variable, but econometrics applies the latter with many special methods of quantitative analysis based on economic data. Because this quantitative analysis can be regression, can be any kind of multidimensional analysis or time series analysis or many others. So, we refer to a basic question that why econometrics is referred to as a separate discipline. As it is said, because economic statistics and mathematical statistics, they go hand in hand within one roofing of econometrics. Otherwise, they will be treated as dichotomous topics. Now we move on to the most important and the fundamental aspect of econometrics, that is the methodology of econometrics. That is how a researcher or any econometrician will follow in a sequence of the steps, and that is the formulation of an econometric model. So when we define an econometric model, we thereby refer to any kind of relationship between dependent and independent. So first of all, we refer to the statement of the theory or hypothesis. So hypothesis is just like a conjecture which has to be validated using the data. So as by the statement, we mean that consumption is an increasing function of income, but actually when income rises, people do not spend the entire amount of the income, but they spend less than that of. That is why we say propensity to consume or propensity to spend is lesser. So that is how we can explain how the marginal propensity to consume comes up, and thereby consumption and income can be related with each other. Secondly, we refer to a very important mathematical model of the theory, that is the empirical specification of an econometric model. This refers to the dependent variable y and the independent variable x. So as we can observe that y equals to beta 1 plus beta 2x, and we observe that the slope of the function, which is beta 2, lies in between 0 and 1. This is deeply rooted in the economic theory of consumption function, that when income rises, consumption also rises, but less than that of the increase in income. So beta 1 and beta 2 are the population parameters. Beta 1 is the intercept and beta 2 is the slope coefficient, and that is how they are influencing the dependent variable y. So this is where the mathematical specification takes place. But when we are going for step number 3, which is basically the journey from economic model to an econometric model. So when we are defining an econometric model, we are including the error term, which is U, because X can be income and Y can be consumption expenditure. But apart from income, there are innumerable number of factors which can influence the level of consumption expenditure, which cannot be captured in the study. So those factors will be basically distributed within the error term, which is U. So this error term is a disturbance term, or it is basically a stochastic term, and thereby it also has a very important role in explaining the dynamics between y and x. Now we go for step number 4. Step number 4 is very much important for obtaining data, because that is how the collection of the data will be done. So this data collection can be done in two ways: the data on the personal consumption expenditure, that is y, and the data on the gross domestic product, that is x, that is being done. So this data can be collected over time or can be collected at any cross section. So the fourth step is basically getting into the empirics of the study, which is deeply rooted on the economic foundation. So when we refer to any kind of empirics, we refer to this kind of table. This table is a table on the data which shows that it's a time series data from 1980 to 1991, where X is basically given by the income level expressed in US dollars, and Y is the consumption expenditure also expressed in US dollars, so that Y can be the function of X, or consumption expenditure can be the function of income. So based on this, we are estimating the model, because estimation of the model is also very important in this regard, which is the fundamental part of an econometric modeling. So what we get an estimated equation which is given by an intercept and the slope. So in any kind of econometric model, this is the estimated equation is being done, and this is based on the method of least square, where we are minimizing the sum of squares which appears. So here our observation is very clear that we are referring to the value of 0.7194, which boils down to 0.72. Because in any kind of empirical function, which is the equation of a straight line, then this 0.72 is none other than the slope of the function, or which is MPC. So it means that when the real income increases, then we can observe that the consumption also increases by 72 units. So that is how we can explain how X is influencing Y hat, or how the level of income is influencing the level of consumption. So when we refer to the hat, we are basically referred to one variable influencing the other, and that is what is based on the population value. So basically, on the basis of the population, the sample is being collected, and this sample statistic validate the details of the population of an econometric model. After the estimation of the econometric model, we refer to the method of hypothesis testing. So when we are referring to the hypothesis testing, we are basically going to contradict or accept the hypothesis that is framed. So here the hypothesis in this particular problem is that consumption is a rising function of income, or is that the MPC, or the marginal propensity to consume, becomes less than 1 statistically. Because we say that if there is a rise in the level of income, consumption expenditure definitely rises, but less than that of the increase in income. So this is very much valid when we look for any kind of slope of a consumption function. So this hypothesis testing is basically a refutation or confrontation of economic theories. So whenever we are referring to any kind of confirmation, we mean that we are framing two kinds of hypotheses. One is null hypothesis, and we are contradicting the null hypothesis. So thereby, when we refer to any kind of confutation, it means that this is basically defending the null, or we are accepting the null hypothesis in general. So based on the sample evidence, we have the object of hypothesis testing or statistical inference. So based on the statistical inference, we can take up the process of data collection and estimation methods. Next, we refer to point number 7, which is regarding the forecasting or the prediction. So when we refer to the forecasting or the prediction, thereby the estimated equation is being constructed or built up. So based on the independent variable, we can go for the estimated value of the dependent variable, and thereby we can refer to y hat equals to the intercept plus something related into the slope. So thereby we put down some of the independent variables which can be forecasted in the near future. For example, we put down $6,000 in 1994, then what can be the forecast of y hat? So based on these, the forecasting can be done. And we can also explain the nature of the slope. So the slope is given by marginal propensity to consume, and thereby the forecasting or the prediction takes place. So this is how the methodology takes care of when we are referring to the forecasting. And this forecasting is based on the data collection, estimation, and finally it also refers to any kind of policy drawing or inference drawing. So this is how we can apply in the real field. That is, using the model for control or policy purposes. That means if we put down the numerical values, then we can say that if there is an income of $5,882, produce an expenditure of $4,000. So this type of empirical evidence can be listed out, and where we can frame any kind of policy to look into it, whether it's a monetary or a fiscal policy in general. So depending upon the econometric methodology, we can invite a question regarding the methodology formulation, like what are the steps in econometric methodology. The steps thereby go by formulation of the model, framing of the hypothesis, estimation of the model, validity of the model keeping the current values or forecasting in the future, and finally drawing a conclusion based on a policy framework. So when we are referring to any kind of economic theory, we refer to the basic fundamentals. Then we go for the mathematical model, and this mathematical model is basically without any error term or without any kind of specification on the random factor or the stochastic factor. So this mathematical model takes care of the econometric model where the error is being included. Based on the econometric model, the data is being collected. So this data can be qualitative or this data can be quantitative, based on which we can draw the inference. This basically refers to the estimation. So when we are estimating a particular model or estimating the values, then we are basically referring to estimation using the data or the results that we get. This also refers to hypothesis testing, because by hypothesis testing we mean the null hypothesis or the alternative hypothesis which can be taken care of, and based on the statistical inference we can accept them. And on the basis of that, we can go for the final forecasting, that is prediction on the basis of future values. So as a result, we can say that when we are going for a policy framing, when we are going for the application of the control of the variables, then definitely econometrics plays an important role, and that is how the econometrics takes care of. So on the basis of this, we can see that the econometric modeling is actually an application of a control variable and also the policy reference, and thereby an econometrician can take care of the formulation till the point of forecasting and prediction. Finally, any kind of econometric modeling can be applied for policy purpose, whether at the cross-section level, time series level, within the framework of micro and macro dimensions. So thereby an econometrics which appears to be an amalgamation of economic statistics and also application in the theory and also in the deep-rooted values of the system. Econometrics also is a discipline which is treated as a separate discipline because it amalgamates economic theory, economic statistics, application of the mathematical models in this regard. It also takes care of an economic theory in particular which is validated using the data, where the data is being collected using the primary and the secondary method, survey method, or by the secondary database. Based on that, an hypothesis is constructed. So this hypothesis is based on a conjecture which needs to be validated using an empirical specification. So by empirical specification, we mean a model which takes care of the relationship between the dependent and the independent variables in particular. This also refers to any kind of functional relationship between them, and thereby the data collection can be done. This data collection also takes care of a very, very important step which looks into the amalgamation of the theory and practice. So when we look into the practice, it refers to the data modeling and also the control variables in this approach. Finally, the data analysis also can be extended to the forecasting method, and thereby the prediction can be done. So thereby, in conclusion, we can say that econometrics should be treated as a separate discipline. It is a validity to an economic theory where the applications are being done and the formulation of the steps are necessary, starting from the formulation till the point of prediction. And that is how an econometric model will be more holistic in approach, taking care of the research insights and also the hypothesis testing in this regard. Thank you.